Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to another edition of Crimes of the Week International. Representatives from Australia's Victoria Police say that a wild 12-hour chase came to an equally dramatic end this week when a female suspect was shot by officers while armed with a gun in a stolen vehicle. The whole thing began on the afternoon of April 3rd when a family in the Melbourne suburb of Noble Park were the victims of a terrifying carjacking. The family members were minding their own business when they were approached by a man who demanded that they hand over their Ford Fairmont. The father of the family quickly obeyed the robber's demands after he saw a bulge in his clothing that he recognized as a gun. The situation was immediately reported to police. However, by the time officers caught up with the man, the case had taken an even more alarming turn. The male suspect was now accompanied by a female passenger. The pair were allegedly threatening people and pointing their gun out the window at other drivers on the road. By this point, it was nearly 12 hours later, and the stolen Ford was driving in the suburb of Mulgrave. Patrol cars began a chase while police helicopters tracked the suspects overhead. They followed as the suspects attempted to flee all over Melbourne's southeast, pulling dangerous and desperate maneuvers while driving at speeds of more than 60 miles per hour. The whole thing finally came to an end around 5:30 a.m. on April 4th, when Victoria Police managed to box in the stolen Ford near the intersection of Police and Springvale roads. By this point, the female passenger was allegedly threatening her male accomplice with the gun, causing officers to fire at her through the vehicle's windshield. Upon being hit, she was removed from the car and placed under arrest. Moments later, the driver was also taken into custody. So far, the two suspects have not been named and have been identified only as a 29-year-old woman and a 27-year-old man from Noble Park. The pair were both treated for non-life-threatening injuries following their arrests and are expected to face charges in the coming days. Representatives from England's Sussex Police say that a 19-year-old boy is in custody and is facing serious charges following a terrifying incident last week in which he allegedly attacked multiple family members, killing his father. The whole thing began at around 7 a.m. on April 1st when emergency calls started pouring in from residents in the Hollingbury area of Brighton. Several people told police dispatchers that they heard screaming coming from one of the homes on Hartfield Avenue. It sounded like a child was yelling, "No, no, stop, help," and a woman was seen pounding on a window upstairs, desperately trying to get people's attention. Moments later, an older woman had fallen out of the front door of the home and collapsed bleeding onto the lawn. When officers arrived at the property a short time later, the situation was quickly brought under control. According to police, they were able to restrain a teenage boy who was allegedly attacking people inside the house. The 19-year-old suspect has since been identified as Fabio Botros and was led away from the residence in handcuffs not long after authorities arrived at the scene. At the same time, the woman who was bleeding on the lawn, 57-year-old Maria Marvin, was taken to a local hospital along with her 11-year-old son Mario, who had also suffered serious injuries. As rapid and effective as the police response was, sadly, not everyone could be saved. Upon making their way inside, police found the 19-year-old suspect's father, 57-year-old Imad Botros Farag, suffering from critical head wounds. He was later pronounced dead a short time later. It's said that Imad was Maria's husband and that the suspect and all of the victims were part of the same family. It's now alleged that Fabio Botros attacked the victims that morning with 2 knives and a hammer. Unfortunately, right now, almost no additional information has been released about the case. We don't know what Botros' alleged motive was for the deadly attack, nor what happened in the lead-up to the incident. In interviews with local media, neighbors told reporters that the Botros family were originally from Egypt, but had lived in the UK for many years. Several described them as the perfect neighbors, saying that they mostly kept to themselves, but were polite and friendly, and would always say hello to other people in the area. At the time of this recording, Fabio Botros has been charged with murder as well as 2 counts of attempted murder. He's expected to remain in custody until his trial, which is scheduled for later this year. Officials in India say that a 24-year-old American man is looking at some serious jail time this week after he completely ignored and violated countless laws surrounding the protection of an isolated indigenous tribe in order to make content for his YouTube channel. The man in question, 24-year-old Mikhailo Polyakov, reportedly traveled to India's Andaman and Nicobar Islands near the end of March of this year. The island chain is quite remote and is located in the middle of the Indian Ocean. And while the area is a major hub for tourism, one of the parts of the archipelago is completely off limits. You might have heard of it before. It's called North Sentinel Island. For those that are unfamiliar, a little bit of background. North Sentinel Island is home to one of the last remaining so-called uncontacted indigenous tribes in the world. The North Sentinelese, who are believed to number between 150 and 200 people, have no communication with the outside and have lived on their island for thousands of years. On the few occasions that people have tried to interact with them, the tribe has made their thoughts on the matter incredibly clear. They've attacked basically every person, aircraft, or vessel that has tried to approach them. As a result, over several decades, the Indian government has taken steps to protect their way of life. Travel of any kind to the island is completely forbidden, and in fact, it's illegal to go within 3 miles of North Sentinel. That being said, I'm sure many of you can already see where this is going. Indian officials allege that Polyakov traveled to the Andaman Islands for the express purpose of flouting all of these rules and protections, and he apparently did it to make content for his YouTube channel, where he goes by the name Neo-Orientalist. According to reports, after arriving on a neighboring island in the capital of Port Blair, Polyakov got together a bunch of supplies. These included a gray inflatable Gemini boat, fuel, binoculars, and of course, a GoPro camera. Sources seem to differ on exactly when the 24-year-old set sail, but most media reports we came across state that he left in the early hours of March 29th. Heading out under the cover of darkness, he began the 25-mile voyage from where he cast off on Kurmadera Beach. Upon making it to North Sentinel around 10 a.m., Polyakov reportedly began scoping out the island with his binoculars. He then started blowing a whistle to attract the attention of the tribe. During this time, he also began filming. While it appears that footage has not been released, in the recording he could allegedly be heard saying, quote, "That is it. The last uncontacted tribe. The last mystery. If they see me, will they attack or will they accept me?" After apparently blowing his whistle for over an hour straight, the 24-year-old went ashore. He was carrying a coconut and a can of Diet Coke, which he brought for the North Sentinelese in what he later described as a peace offering. For several minutes, he filmed more footage of himself as he collected sand samples. He then left the coconut and can of pop on the shore before heading back to the main Andaman Islands. Unfortunately for Polyakov, though, as he returned, he was spotted by fishermen who quickly figured out what he had been up to and alerted police. The 24-year-old was arrested on March 31st, 2 days after illegally traveling to North Sentinel. As you might imagine, Indian officials were not impressed by Polyakov's stunt, especially when they learned that he had already been in trouble before for illegally filming and harassing other indigenous tribes. Not only that, but he'd allegedly been caught on at least 2 prior occasions over the past several months where he'd previously attempted to get to North Sentinel Island. While Polyakov referred to himself as a thrill seeker following his arrest, many others are now calling him something else. In short, an idiot. This includes the director of an indigenous rights group called Survival International, who said in a statement after news of the story broke this week, quote, "It beggars belief that someone could be that reckless and idiotic. This person's actions not only endangered his own life, they put the lives of the entire Sentinelese tribe at risk. It's very well known by now that uncontacted peoples have no immunity to common outside diseases like flu or measles, which could completely wipe them out." That last bit is a real concern, as Indian officials have stated that they have not been able to recover the Diet Coke and other items Polyakov brought to the island, and they probably won't, so they simply have to hope that no disease spreads as a result of the 24-year-old's actions. What's perhaps equally as crazy is it seems Polyakov has no appreciation for just how lucky he was. One of the last people to do something similar, who also happened to be an American, was a Christian missionary named John Allen Chow. In 2018, Chow went to the island to try and convert the North Sentinelese to Christianity. That trip ended with Chow being killed in a hail of arrows and his body being dragged into the jungle by several of the tribe members. His remains were never recovered. At the time of this recording, Mikhailo Polyakov remains in custody in India. It's not clear exactly what officials are planning to do from here, but it's been reported that if they decide to pursue charges, he could be looking at up to 5 years in prison. Authorities in Japan's Aichi prefecture say that a 21-year-old man has been arrested in connection with a disturbing crime this week, after he allegedly killed a teenage girl and hid her body in his room because of an argument over an online video game. According to local media sources, the whole thing began sometime on March 28th, when 16-year-old Waka Kato left her home in Tokyo's Katsushika ward. The teen told her parents that she was going to spend some time with a friend in Aichi who she had met while playing games online. The last time Waka's family spoke to her was the following morning. However, shortly after this, they realized that they could no longer get a hold of her. They ended up reporting her missing to police later that same day. It seems the parents didn't know exactly where Waka was, because it was only after authorities obtained her cell data that they were able to locate her. The information led them to a home in the city of Ichinomiya, where 21-year-old Masaki Iguchi lived. Upon arriving there, officers made a horrifying discovery in Iguchi's bedroom. Inside of a closet was Waka's lifeless body. The 16-year-old was lying face up and had been wrapped in cloth that was secured in tape. She had been stabbed numerous times in the back of her head and neck, and it was determined that she had died of hemorrhagic shock. While it's unclear exactly what happened in the lead up to the awful revelation, Eguchi reportedly offered a partial confession. He allegedly told police that sometime after he and Waka met up, they got into an argument over video games. After the killing, it's believed that Eguchi logged into Waka's online accounts from his own phone and sent messages posing as her. However, this had failed to cover up what had happened. According to police, Eguchi is unemployed and lives with his parents. He allegedly used a kitchen knife to commit the murder, though so far has only been arrested for abandonment of a corpse. More charges are expected to follow once the investigation is concluded. Authorities in the Indian state of Maharashtra say that they received a major and unexpected helping hand in a recent robbery investigation when an unusual piece of evidence turned out to be the key to the entire case. The whole thing began sometime on March 28th, when the 30-year-old victim, Boru Benar, was in the middle of his workday. He was traveling in a van and doing some routine deliveries in the town of Palghar with his driver, when suddenly they were flagged down by 3 men. The men looked like they were trying to sort out something with a motorcycle that had broken down and asked for help. Evidently, wanting to be a good person, Boru told his driver to pull over so they could lend some assistance. Unfortunately, what he didn't know was that they had just fallen into a trap. Before Boru and his driver knew it, they had been attacked by the 3 men, who disabled them by throwing chili powder into their eyes. As they stumbled around, temporarily blinded and in pain, the thieves stole more than 685,000 rupees in cash, the equivalent of about $8,000 US. After threatening the victims, the gang took off on their motorcycle, which turned out to be quite functional. When police began investigating, understandably, Boru and the driver didn't have very much information to give them. They didn't know the men that had attacked them, and it had all happened so fast. However, that's when authorities caught a lucky break. You see, the thieves had carried the chili powder used in the crime in a folded-up wedding invitation. When police looked into the names on the card, it led them straight to one of the suspects, 23-year-old Kiran Lamte. It seems that Lamte quickly gave up his accomplices, allowing police to arrest 3 other people. 2 of them were the ones that apparently carried out the actual robbery with Lamte, while the final man was the alleged mastermind. It turned out it was Boru's own brother, 34-year-old Datu Benar. In addition to arresting all of those involved, police say that they were also able to recover all of the stolen cash. The The family, friends, and colleagues of a gifted Italian scientist are mourning his loss this week after he was found murdered under absolutely chilling circumstances while he was traveling through South America. According to reports, 42-year-old Alessandro Coatti was an accomplished and talented biologist. Though originally from Italy, he had been based out of the UK for many years, where he had quite the impressive career. When he first arrived in Britain, he was a postgraduate neuroscience researcher at University College London. He went on to work at the Royal Society of Biology, where beginning in April of 2017, he shifted into science policy work. Co-workers described Alessandro as a, quote, passionate and dedicated scientist, leading RSB animal science work, writing numerous submissions, organizing events, and giving evidence in the House of Commons. After more than 7 years with the Royal Society, Alessandro had decided to leave to chase another dream. At the end of 2024, he went to volunteer in Ecuador and spend time traveling through South America. That's how he apparently found himself in the Colombian city of Santa Marta late last week. According to local media sources, Alessandro was staying at a hotel in the city's scenic historic center and had arrived there on April 3rd. The following day, he was witnessed leaving to go out and explore the area. It was the last time he was seen alive. 2 days later, on April 6th, some children playing on the outskirts of the city stumbled across a grisly discovery. Inside of a suitcase, which had been left abandoned on a road leading to a local soccer stadium, they found human remains. The bag contained a head, feet, and hands, which were later determined to belong to Alessandro. Sadly, right now, not much else is known about the case. It appears Colombian authorities have not yet been able to locate the rest of Alessandro's remains, nor do they seemingly have any idea who could be responsible. The only potential lead we know about is that Alessandro was apparently asking about a place called Minca shortly before his disappearance. Minca is a small town about 10 miles away from Santa Marta in the Sierra Nevada mountains, and is a popular spot for hikers and climbers. However, it has also historically not been the safest area. In the past, the town was occupied by militant groups fighting with the Colombian government and was closed off to everyone except locals. This has supposedly changed over the last few years, though it still seems to be a potential avenue of investigation. Thankfully, it appears that Colombian officials are taking the case very seriously, and already a reward worth the equivalent of approximately $11,000 US has been offered by Santa Marta's mayor in exchange for information leading to the arrests of those responsible for the brutal murder. In a statement, the mayor said in part, quote, "I have instructed the authorities to join forces to solve the death of the Italian citizen Alessandro Coatti. This crime will not go unpunished. Criminals must know that in Santa Marta, criminality has no place. We will pursue them until they are brought to justice." At the time of this recording, the situation is still developing. Authorities in the German state of Rhineland-Palatinate say that they are on the hunt for a dangerous suspected killer this week, after an entire family was found dead in their home under chilling circumstances. The whole thing began at around 3:45 a.m. on April 2nd, when police received an emergency call from a 44-year-old woman identified only as Nadine S. It's not clear exactly what was said during that call, but what we do know is this: Nadine made it clear that her and her family members' lives were in danger. When officers responded to the address, a single-family home in the town of Weitefeld, they encountered a man who appeared to be running from the property. This man was able to escape, but in the meantime, police turned their attention to figuring out what was happening at the house. When they went inside, they encountered an awful scene. Inside were the bodies of Nadine, her 47-year-old husband Kai, and their 16-year-old son Killian. The family had died from a combination of gunshot and stab wounds, and their hands had been bound with cable ties. Police say that an abundant amount of forensic evidence was discovered at the scene, which along with witness accounts pointed towards a suspect. They have now identified the alleged killer as 61-year-old Alexander Meisner. It's believed that Meisner murdered all 3 of the victims at the house sometime after Nadine called for help, and then escaped out of one of the windows just as police arrived. Currently, he remains on the run. Police have reportedly launched a large search effort for Meisner, one utilizing a combination of on-the-ground officers and helicopters. The manhunt is considered especially urgent not just due to the brutal nature of the crime, but also because of Meisner's previous criminal history. According to reports, the 61-year-old has prior convictions for a number of disturbing offenses, many of which were committed against his ex-wife, Teresa. Among those crimes is attempted manslaughter. Understandably, the situation has left the whole community on edge, particularly because Weitefeld is only a town of about 2,200 people. Crimes like this don't usually happen here, and news about the case has left many residents reeling. Police have advised people to stay indoors while the search continues and to avoid picking up hitchhikers. As for why all of this happened and what the motive could have been, so far that remains a complete mystery. Local news reports have cited statements from neighbors who say they were worried about Nadine and her family in the lead up to the crime, but it's unclear if this had anything to do with the murders. Neighbors said that there appeared to be a lot of conflict in the household and that the family didn't appear to be happy. However, how Alexander Meisner factors into this and what his relationship was to the victims remains unknown. The only other real piece of information we have also comes from a neighbor who told a local media outlet during an interview that he was woken up by his German Shepherd barking on the morning of the crime. When he got up to quiet the dog, he heard loud voices but didn't think anything of it at the time. This was around 3:15, a full half hour before Nadine's emergency call to police. This could suggest that a prolonged argument took place before the killings, though, of course, this has not been confirmed by police. At the time of this recording, the situation is still developing, and the search for Alexander Meisner continues. The friends and family of a young Sicilian university student are demanding justice and calling for change this week after she was allegedly killed in a brutal broad daylight attack at the hands of an obsessive stalker. The chilling crime unfolded on the afternoon of March 24th as the victim, 22-year-old Sara Campanella, was waiting at a bus stop in the southern Italian city of Messina. According to reports, a man, later identified as 27-year-old Stefano Argentino, had followed her there. Suddenly, and without warning, he allegedly grabbed her and began attacking her with a knife. Sara screamed for help and tried to get away, yelling, quote, "Stop it, let me go." This caught the attention of at least one passerby who attempted to intervene, but sadly, it was already too late. Sara had suffered a critical injury to her neck and collapsed to the ground. A short time later, she was pronounced dead before even arriving at the hospital. Argentino was reportedly able to flee the scene, but thanks to a combination of CCTV and cell data, he was located a few hours later. He was arrested in the town of Noto, about 100 miles south. Following his arrest, police say Argentino confessed to killing Sara. However, he refused to divulge any information about his motive. Still, a disturbing picture quickly emerged of the 27-year-old's alleged obsessive behavior. According to Sara's loved ones, Argentino had been harassing her for at least the last 2 years since she started university. The 22-year-old was studying to become a biomedical technician, and for the most part, she really enjoyed her life at school. The one exception to that was Stefano Argentino. Despite being little more than acquaintances, Argentino allegedly pestered Sara constantly to go out with him. No matter how many times she said no and asked him to stop, he refused to leave her alone. He also apparently routinely complained to others that she no longer smiled at him anymore. While the behavior is certainly incredibly alarming in retrospect, it appears that Sara viewed it as more annoying than threatening. As a result, she never reported the situation to police. That being said, even if she had, there's no guarantee anything would have been done. After all, how many stories have we covered just like this where police and restraining orders were involved, only for things to play out exactly the same? It seems that this is how many members of the public also feel, as over the past few days, protests have erupted in several cities demanding change. These sentiments have been echoed by some who are closer to the country's institutions, including former minister and lawmaker Marta. In a statement following the news this week, she stated in part, quote, "Women continue to be killed by those who don't accept their rejection. We need to make an extraordinary effort, a collective act of rebellion against this culture of death." This sense of anger and outrage has only grown in the days since, because sadly, less than 48 hours after Sara's murder, an eerily similar crime also made headlines. Another university student, Ilaria Sula, was found dead on March 26th. The 22-year-old statistics student at Sapienza University of Rome had disappeared 3 days earlier. Her body was discovered stuffed into a suitcase and abandoned in a forested area near the Italian capital. Her former boyfriend, 23-year-old Mark Sampson, has since been arrested for the crime. The investigations into both murders are still underway. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a second to give a huge shout out to everyone who has made it this far into the video. Seriously, thank you so much for watching. If you found today's upload interesting and informative, we'd be honored if you consider liking and subscribing, as well as hitting the notification bell and selecting all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to help support the channel, we'd love to have you join us over on Patreon. Patrons get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. You can learn more at patreon.com/crimezone, where you'll also find some of the fine folks whose names are currently on screen. All that being said, we understand that not everyone has the means to support financially, and that's totally okay. We appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much everyone, and take care.